30th Olympiad. Hope you're enjoying the games. Whatever country you represent, we hope your athletes are doing well. I believe there are 48 representatives from Cal in the games this time, athletes, coaches, and event operators. So go Bears! Happy for that. Next Sunday, as you know, will be Jeff and Erica's last Sunday with us, and we just wanted to let you know what we'll be doing. Tonight we'll have the final 360 Homes meeting at their place for this term. We'll be starting the next round in a couple weeks. So if you haven't had a chance to go, or you've maybe just gone once, or maybe not at all, don't worry about that. Just go anyway and have fun tonight. And if you don't know where that is, you can see Jeff or Erica, and they'll be glad to give you directions. I don't think there'll actually be any ceiling walking going on, because we depicted, that picture may have been a little bit of an overstatement about the party, but it'll still be really good. And then next Sunday morning, this will be their last time with us. We'll have some people sharing some personal things about what the Sandstroms have meant to all of us during these last couple of years that they have been here. Jeff will be speaking next Sunday morning, and then afterwards we'll have a lunch together over at Nathan and Angela George's, just about a block from here, to have a kind of a send-off time and get a chance to just see these guys again face to face before they pack everything in the van and drive away to Illinois. So you want to be part of that. And if you know anybody who has maybe been here for a while, it's a good time to come back and just kind of reconnect. We're so proud of what these two are doing. We totally, it just is painful to see people go that you love and care about, but if we're going to be that kind of group that sends people out, this is sort of part of the territory that we have to navigate. And they'll be back for Paul and Natasha's wedding next May, so we'll see them then. But we'll look forward to that day coming. I am a fanatic about recycling. I remember the world before the first Earth Day, which was April 22nd, 1970. I was a junior in high school. And in the old pre-Earth Day world, you went to McDonald's, which was new. Yeah, think of it. I know, new. There's a paradigm shift for you, huh? And you went through, you got your Big Mac in a paper wrapper and a giant Coca-Cola and a huge French fries, all for about 95 cents. And you drove away in your car, and after you ate everything, you just wadded the paper all up together and threw it out the window. Because the notion was the environment was vast beyond our ability to calculate, and so it could simply absorb any amount of waste material. And you would drive along American highways, and you would find Big Mac wrappers and all kinds of junk strewn in roadside ditches, and that was our concept of environmentalism. And then Earth Day happens in 1970, and the environmental movement gets rolling, yada, 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 and there is a recycling bin outside of every home in Berkeley every single week. There is outside of mine, and so I just feel like this is almost a religious experience. And so I go through my whole house every week and collect things like Post-it notes, and throw them in the recycling thing, and plastic milk containers, and scraps of junk mail that was that arrived in the mailbox that week, and anything I could find. I put it all out in front of my house for our pickup, which is Thursday morning. So when I wake up Thursday morning, I feel like somewhere there is a tree growing that is still standing, in part because of my efforts. Even a half, just to get half of a Post-it note, you still have to cut the whole tree. It's an all or nothing proposition. And so I feel like I'm saving the world, and it's a wonderful thing. But this isn't a perfect world. And so there's a downside to recycling, which is that when you round up all the scraps of paper and put them into this bin, when the recycling crews come by and throw them into the big truck, the onshore breeze from the San Francisco Bay arrives just then, blows through that truck, and all of my recycled Post-it notes go out onto the sidewalk and all over my front lawn like confetti. Now in physics they say that every action causes an equal and opposite reaction, and my recycling efforts are just like that, because when my half Post-it notes end up all over my front lawn, my wife is mad at me. We have had this fight 1,000 times. Now, if you're not married, you'll find this when you do marry. You will not have 500 fights. You will have 5 fights 100 times. I could get an amen from all the married people now, but that would be cheap manipulation. It's not, it really is the way it is. And so this is a janitorial fight. We have this fight every week over recycling. Because after 36 years together, this is now a scripted part of our relationship. I insist on recycling, and she insists on no post-it notes on the front lawn, which I regard as unreasonable. It's not a perfect world. Recycling is the religion we must believe in. Cleanliness is a very secondary thing, really, and so much of our relationship falls into that kind of scripted category, but you only get to the scripts by making changes in your life. And that's why this month we've been focusing on the concept of transitions, because how we manage the transitions, the turning points, has a lot to do with what scripts we end up with and whether they're life-giving or not. The quality of the regular parts, the patterned parts, depend to a great extent on the calls we make when we're at the transition points. So last week we talked about the transition that's going on in our church, and we're going from a church plant, which means I wonder if they're going to make it, to a planting church, which means, wow, that's amazing what has happened there. And Jeff and Erica heading for Illinois is the primary example of what we started calling the new normal. The way silver is the new black, sending people out is the new normal. Church should be a place of comfort and peace and rest and all those good things, but it also should be a disruptive place where we become open to the move of God in our lives in ways that are just plain not fair. Where he just shows up and does stuff we don't condone, you know? Where he intrudes on my career path with these crazy, did you know you're only one great idea from being one of the most influential people in the world? You're one great idea away with today's ability for ideas to go viral in virtually minutes. We're one great idea away from enormous influence, and God has a way of bringing ideas like that to bear in our lives, and what we want to be is a place that is an incubator for that kind of thing. And so that's the transition that's going on here. But the most powerful transition that can happen is really an individual one, and that is the transition into a life-giving relationship with God. That can seem like a stretch. You know, if you take a bowl of room temperature water and a bowl of boiling water and put them both in a freezer, which one freezes first? The boiling water does. This phenomenon has been known since Aristotle, and no one knows why it's true. In fact, it's such a conundrum in science that the Royal Chemical Society recently created a 1,000-pound prize in the UK for the first person who could come up with a compelling explanation. People are working on all kinds of things, but nobody's worked out the boiling water issue yet. Sometimes the things that seem most unlikely can be the most powerful transforming effect. The person or the issue that's the most boiling, the most opposite, and the most naysaying under the right conditions can be its complete opposite in a very short amount of time. That's what happens when God invites us into a life-changing relationship. We don't just change ideas, we change lives. This faith is not an idea, it's a life in Christ. Today we're going to visit with someone who understood that, a man named Paul. He's the most famous of the early Christian preachers. He's in jail, again. The Romans, who seem to love imprisonment, are holding him in the capital city of their empire against his will. And he is deeply concerned about the followers of Jesus who are in different parts of the empire, and he communicates to them by letters that are hand-carried by couriers to congregations in cities around the different provinces, which are mostly in the area around the Mediterranean Sea. Today we're going to find him writing to the city of Colossae, which was in what we would call southwestern Turkey. This is not a group of people that he has ever met. It's not a church that he founded. It was founded by his friend Epaphras. And he's writing them a letter that a man named Tychicus is going to carry to them and probably have read out loud to the people who are there to express Paul's concerns for them as he's written these words that are inspired by the Holy Spirit. One of the reasons why the New Testament can be tricky to understand is when so much of it is letters that are written in response to reports and problems and other letters that we don't have access to. And so when you drop into a letter like Colossae, it can almost be experienced like, have you ever listened to half of a phone conversation? Someone in the room with you is on the cell phone with someone else, and you're hearing what they're saying, but you're not hearing what the other person is saying. And so have you done this? You take one of those Post-it notes, which you better later recycle, and you write on it, who are you talking to? Because you're just so curious, it's killing you to know, because it's like, no, I didn't kill him. And you're like, what? You're like, who is this? And later you find out, and suddenly all these random words like, oh, I see what you're saying. Reading the epistles is like that. We don't have access to the other side of the conversation a lot of the times. So we try to fill in some context because that helps us understand the source of what is being written here. We know that things are going pretty well in this church, that Paul's received a report from Epaphras, who's with him when this letter is written, that says that the Colossians are in pretty good shape. They're growing in faith and grace. They've got problems because it's not a perfect world. Their recycling probably doesn't work perfectly either. And from my reading of the letter, what I get from them is that they were nice. It's a great virtue. They were nice. It would be the kind of people that you would like to visit with at a 360 Homes meetings, or people you would go out to coffee with. It's a wonderful thing that we don't really stress very much. Just being civil and decent is such a great thing. And so Paul gets this great word, and he's probably very encouraged by that. But the issue they face is that there's a teaching that's creeping into the church, which is undercutting their ability to express God's love to each other and to the community. We don't exactly know what it is. One scholar estimates that there are at least 44 different theories of what this erroneous teaching was. Shall we skip this part? Something was going on that was very dangerous. If you will, it was a sort of theological virus that had crept into their thinking and was in danger of pulling them away from devotion to Christ. We know it's centered around the idea of diminishing the deity of Jesus, and in its place substituting a lot of elaborate rules and regulations and asceticism. The notion that I'm spiritual if I live very, 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 very plainly on a very low level, that makes me holy or religious or acceptable to God. And if I have that, this teaching said, Jesus, well, that's kind of a whatever. And so Paul's really concerned about that, because it really puts at risk this whole idea that God can bring us out of one state, the boiling water, into another state, which is the frozen water, because rules and regulations just can't do that. They just make you a fancier version of boiling water, or a flavored, seasoned version of boiling water, but they can't make you freeze. And so he writes to the Colossians to try to correct that false teaching. This is a small town, prone to earthquakes, populated by people who favor abstract intellectualization. I'm just saying. And so when we drop into chapter 1, you know what he's doing? He's praying for them. He's so scared that this is all going to jump the rails and crash, because they're being pulled off by all of these people and he's not there. It must be the way some parents feel when their sons and daughters go to Cal as freshmen. And they write and email and text. Your mom texts you 56 times a day the first week. Are you all right? Are you getting enough to eat? Are you wearing your jacket? Are you reading your Bible every day? And so he's praying, and we drop into his prayer. You can tell a lot about people by how they pray. That's why it's hard to pray out loud in front of others sometimes, because it's so intimate. It's revelatory, and it makes you kind of... But he's not afraid to do that, and so here's what he says. It's on the back of your program, also on the screen, in Colossians 1, verse 9. And so, from the day we heard, meaning the day we heard the good news about how well you're doing, we have not ceased to pray for you. That's a wonderful thing. If you have parents or grandparents who pray for you on a regular basis, who say your name in front of the throne of grace, well, doesn't that mean the world to you? Especially sometimes if you're having a struggle or a difficulty, just to know somebody's behind you. When Jeff and Erica go to Illinois, this will be true of us. We'll hear the good reports about what's happening there, and we will be praying for them without ceasing so that God does really special and dramatic things among them. Asking that you may be filled, that means filled to the fullness, like putting almost too much air in a balloon. Not filled up with an ounce, but filled up like this with the knowledge, the profound knowledge, the deep knowledge, the heart-gripping kind of knowledge of God's will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Wisdom meaning the ability to think correctly, and understanding the ability to take what I think and apply it to situations in ways that solve my problems. What he's saying is that the knowledge of God is the most practical thing there is, because it brings with it the wisdom that's in the mind of God and the ability to apply that to the actual things I've got to navigate to make my real life work. And as a result, what he's saying is, listen, these false teachers, they're just offering you a bunch of abstraction. They're just throwing a rule book at you, which, by the way, you can only get from their publishing house, and a bunch of arcane theories about being enlightened about this and that truth and this light from here and that light from there, when the truth is you need your life to work. And what makes our lives work is being filled with the knowledge of God to the point where I'm like that almost overinflated balloon, and the wisdom of God becomes the natural thing to do, the rule instead of the exception. Here's what comes from that in verse 10. So as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. In other words, in a manner of equal weight. So if God is worthy on this scale, and I'm full of the knowledge of God, I'm going to live in a way that accurately represents the worthiness of God in the world. In other words, at some point, someone should come up to me and say, what's wrong with you? You know, are you on drugs or something? I mean, do you need an intervention? You're not like other people that I know. When you're hurt, you don't hit back. When you're cursed, you bless. When you're stung, you love. When someone trips you and you fall down, you don't get up and swing at them. What is wrong with you? Where did you grow up? I mean, are you the product of some accident in a genetics laboratory? I mean, how did all this happen? And all that's wrong is the life of God in you is bigger than the life of the world in you, and so you act and you live in a different way, and that makes us displaying the worthiness of God, fully pleasing to Him, bearing or producing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God. So Paul's telling the Colossians, look, if you want to know more about God tomorrow, what you need to do is act on what you know today. This is a cycle that he's teaching. Walk in a worthy manner. That's going to fully please God. It's really going to make God happy. It's going to make God smile at you. When he thinks of you, he's going to smile about you. You're going to become fruit-bearing. Every good work is going to bear fruit, and your knowledge of God is going to increase. Sometimes, over the years we've talked to people and they've come with terrible personal struggles. Often those struggles center around, I don't know what to do. That's the operative phrase. Or we put that in terms of the will of God, or I don't know what to do with this decision or that decision. So we pray with people, and we believe the Lord will supply them with wisdom and direction. We've seen that happen, I don't know, so many times I can't doubt it at this point. But the beginning question is not what do I do next, but what do I know now? If I act on what I know now, what Paul's telling the Colossians is more is going to come. If I don't act on what I don't know now, I have to ask myself, can God really trust me with the next thing? Because I haven't done the stuff I already know. In other words, if I don't know enough to stop speaking abusively to my girlfriend, should I really be praying for the right woman to marry? if I don't know enough to live in purity now, should I really be worried about where I'm going to go to grad school? Do I intend to take the same life and live it there? I want to go to the playoffs when I'm not even succeeding in the regular season. So he's saying, listen, if you have no faith at all, if you think this is such a joke, the whole Jesus thing, that the totality of your faith is just a tiny little mustard seed, just act on that. Go to church and mock, you know? Go to church and send me angry emails on Monday. Just act, just do something. Act on what you know now, and God's going to meet you at that place. The Lord is so full of grace and mercy. He doesn't care what our starting point is. He just wants a place to meet with us. And just if all you have is just that, if just a little sparrow, just let it fly. And that's where big crows come from. Verse 11 says, may you be strengthened continuously, as this says, with all power according to his glorious might. This means the kind of power that overcomes resistance, that no matter what pushes back on you, this kind of power that comes from God will overcome it and bring us through to victory, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you or made you competent to share in the inheritance of saints in light. The word inheritance is a term in real estate close to the heart of every Californian, which means a lot or parcel. God has given you the corner lot in the heavenly neighborhood. You have the Jesus condominium because he has made you competent. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Not worthy, but competent, functional, acting on what we know now so that more will come, and has given you this inheritance. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness, the power of darkness, the kingdom that is ruled by me. I remember when I bought my domain name, earlkrebs.com. Have you done that? Oh, you should totally do that. Against the day when that idea comes that makes you one of the most influential people in the world. Because when that idea comes, I can guarantee you that everybody else on the planet will attempt to buy your name and sell it back to you. So you should go out and buy like benroe.com, .net, .org, .tv, .cc, .biz, .gov, absolutely everything. I remember when I did this, it's like, what, like $3 back then. For a year, it's like $3. You know, it's amazing what you can get for nothing on the internet. A lot of it is pretty much worth what you pay for it. But like, I bought all this stuff, and for about 10 minutes, I just felt like the king. Like, I own this for all eternity. As long as GoDaddy.com keeps getting my money, I'll have this URL, and I am the ruler of my domain. Then I realized you actually have to hire someone to make a website for it. I didn't know much about the internet in those days. And that with this wonderful domain, I was now this king, and I could create my website, and on this website I could blog and sell books and post clever thoughts that other people might repost on their websites. This was before Twitter. All of these things, and I could just be the king of the world until somebody hacked it, loaded it up with spam code, and took the whole thing down. So while I still own it, it is of no use to me because you cannot find it except in its archival form if you were to research it. Now, I compare that to something like Google. What Paul is writing to the Colossians is, through Jesus, God has made it possible for you to be transferred from earlkrebs.com, randywu.com, johnsilcox.com to Google. Oh yeah. Now that's the real deal. I'm coming out of this little dark domain where I get to be the king over, well, it's kind of basically just me, isn't it? My stool here, but I'm the king. I really I am. And through Christ I come into this huge domain which I do not get to rule, but in which I have an inheritance in light that changes everything about my entire life, and I go from boiling water to frozen. It's the kingdom of his beloved Son, or the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins, all of the ways that we fall short of the holiness of God. Now I thought to myself, What if Paul were a 59-year-old American man who was trying to communicate across a 40-year cultural gap, which is like the difference between the Civil War and World War I. And in so doing, was attempting to couch his language in the phraseology of modern pop culture. How might he have written these same words? And in the sense of a paraphrase, it might sound just a little bit like this. And so, from the day we got your text, we have not ceased to pray for you by Facebook chat, asking that you may be inflated like a balloon with a profound sense of God's purposes in a way that makes you not only as smart as Tony Stark, but as wise as a GPS. So as to live your life in a way that displays who God is as if you were a 90-inch plasma television in 3D. And make God happy as the characters getting married at the end of a rom-com, because you're producing tangible results in ways that lead to even more dependence on God, the way one Facebook status update always leads to another. May you be continuously strengthened with the Iron Man kind of power that overcomes every form of resistance and results in the ability to stand up under pressure the way the Avengers stood up to those space aliens, while maintaining a long temper with a smile on your face as if you just had your teeth whitened, a smile that reflects a real rejoicing in the Father who has made you as competent as Jason Bourne to stand in a prime piece of spiritual real estate, a heavenly Trader Joe's, among all the other people who know God through Jesus and live in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness, like when the lights go out on that new TV series Revolution. In a domain we rule ourselves, and like a conqueror moving a population, has relocated us to the kingdom ruled by Jesus, a place where there are no zombies, only Jesus, who is the love of God, and because of whom we can be forgiven for all the ways we fall short of God's perfection, which is basically every way there is. Now, as for me, I'm very thankful for the original text when I consider it in that light. It makes the Bible so much more precious and authoritative to me. If you want more of everything that God has for you, if you want to really put your arms around this transfer from you.com to Google, the question is, what do I know now? And what am I prepared to do about it? Because more knowledge of God comes from responding to my current knowledge of God. More faith comes from responding to my current faith, even if it's just a mustard seed. More of Jesus responds to what I know about Jesus today. More love comes from the love I have. More grace comes from the grace I have. More giftedness comes from the gifts I have. Yeah. God has given us everything we need. If we'll respond to it and act on it, we can inherit this new piece of real estate in life and go from boiling to frozen. I'm going to ask our band to join us and lead us in worship this morning, just as we prepare our hearts for the communion service that Jeff's going to come and lead.